Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome back to the show. My name is Dan Hafner. Joined by another guest here today. I'll bring him in a second. But before we get started, we're going to talk today about growth marketing. We're going to talk. My guest Jason here. He's big into the growth marketing world. He's worked with a lot of big companies. Like Google, Headspace, South Park, like all kinds of really, really interesting companies. I'm very interested to get his angle and his approach and his knowledge on these things. So this will be a very, very good episode for this. We like to tell it like it is here on the show, and I'm sure Jason will be right up the alley for this. So before I bring him in, please, as always, like, subscribe, share, whatever the case is, wherever you're listening to this or wherever you're watching this on YouTube, Spotify, whatever, leave us a rating, review. That always helps the podcast grow. Share this episode with someone if you think you find value at it at the end. That is always super appreciated. So that's my little spiel. So welcome, Jason Shaftin of Winston Francois.
Thanks, Dan. Glad to be here.
How are you, man?
Doing well, thanks.
Good, good. So yeah, I mean, I gave a little bit of a teaser there for where you've come from and what you've done. So give us a little bit more, give us a little bit of more background about yourself.
Yeah, so my background is, 20-ish years in growth and marketing, product strategy in really big companies and some tiny ones that you may have never heard of, as well as a few mid-sized ones that people have heard of. My career started at Google. Worked there a long time across a bunch of different interesting businesses, growing the Google Ads businesses. And then I got an opportunity to launch Google Music and Google Play, which was super fun and took me to having my job for a little while working at music festivals around the country. So it's not a bad gig if you can get it. And then made my way to New York. You mentioned South Park in your intro of me. I led marketing at Comedy Central for a couple of years and launched seasons 17 and 18 of South Park, among some other really great franchises and brands there. Then came back to the West Coast, co-founded a doctor house call app called Heal. It was recently acquired by a big healthcare company, Humana. We raised a bunch of venture capital for that business, scaled it up all over the country. And if you've ever gone to the doctor's office and sat in a waiting room, you know that sucks. So that company was all about pushing a button on your phone, like requesting an Uber, and having a doctor show up at your front door to take care of you or your family. It's pretty cool. Then went on to be chief marketing officer at a on-demand massage therapy company called Soothe. And after Soothe, I led growth and marketing at Headspace, the meditation app that's now also been deeply ingrained in the healthcare system and working on mental health and wellness. And after Headspace, my wife and I actually, while I was at Headspace, we got pregnant and with our first kiddo, and made a career pivot to work inside of a big company again. Went to a large healthcare company here in the U.S. and was running a Medicare business for them, a little bit of like a startup inside of that big company. And while I was there, I kept getting asked, hey, can you give me some advice on growth and marketing? Founders, executives, investors that I'd worked with or knew me were kind of pinging me all the time. So I ended up starting this consulting practice called Winston Francois, which is really a growth consultancy, helping a lot of like tech and health and wellness software, and as well as like retail B2B e-com SaaS companies. We've worked with all different types of brands, and we really help them build their growth operating system and scale their business. I've been doing that for kind of 2.5 years full time now. Started the company about 5 years ago, and just really love solving hard growth problems. And I think, kind of like you mentioned in the intro, telling it like it is, I think founders often get trapped inside of their own heads and their own products. And sometimes it's good to get an outsider to say like, hey, that doesn't make any sense. Or, your users don't care about that thing that you care about a lot. They care about this, and helping people understand things from the perspective of the user usually helps make the product better, make the marketing better. So that's what we do, and it's been a lot of fun, and it takes me to interesting conversations like this.
Yeah, I have lots of follow-up questions on that, but the first one I want to ask is just building on what you just said. So why do you think it's so hard for founders, or the people who were the idea, the visionary people? Why do you think sometimes it's so hard to to actually grow your product, to grow your thing? um is it because we tend to fall in love with our product more? Like, in your experience with even with the big companies, the small companies, you mentioned a bunch that I'm familiar with, some that I'm not familiar with. What's the common trend, like, in the person, in the human
Yeah.
being, I'm saying, that you kind of constantly see, that you run into?
Yeah. The founder, especially tech founder mindset, is this insanely optimistic person, right? They believe in a
Hmm.
world that is different than the one we live in.
And you have
And
to.
yeah, and in order to do things that are seemingly impossible to other people, you have to really kind of imagine a future and be hyper optimistic in a way that makes you seem a little crazy. And so I think there's a fine line between that craziness and the kind of reality of where people are right now and how you bring them along. And so that's kind of where my role often comes in, or the team that I've built here is about helping explain and visualize and tell stories about the future as the founder sees it to the people that live in the present, and bringing them along on that journey. One time I was meeting with a founder of a kind of a consumer hardware company. They got acquired by a very, very big company that I won't name. And this person, I gave him feedback on his product. I said, this is kind of, I think I used the word ugly, or doesn't look very good. And he was very defensive, and he was like, it's like telling somebody that their baby is ugly. And I get it, right? But at the same
Yeah.
time, like, there's an element of needing to break break the norms, be disruptive, change things, and then also conform just enough to get people to want to try something that they've never
Mhm.
tried before.
Yeah, and I see that. So you're coming at it from, with that particular situation, right? You're coming at it from like a marketer or UX, UI design perspective. And me coming from a developer perspective, more on that, it's like, well, it gets the job done, and it works, and it does these things.
Right.
But I also see where you're talking about, like, I've seen a lot of people very, very overly optimistic, that they think, the thing that they're building, their idea is going to be the next giant. It's going to revolutionize the Uber industry. It's going to revolutionize the health industry. It's going to
Yep.
revolutionize these things, right? And it could, right? I'm sure you probably see these all the time. Like, yes, your idea certainly could do
Right.
that. uh, just because, executing it is a whole nother thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one thing to come up with a great idea, and anybody can have a great idea, but the hard part is executing. It's where 90% plus of startups fail, right?
Yeah.
It's the execution. There's lots of great ideas. You and I probably could come up with 10 great business ideas in this conversation, but could we actually make them happen and bring them to life and make them real?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of these things, one of your past experiences, I really wanted to ask you about, because I'm a long time and avid user of Headspace.
Right.
I love it. Love the app. It
Yeah.
is one of the cleaner and just most enjoyable to use apps, I think, that I've really ever seen. I started using it a long time ago. I kind of had a drought for a while, and I've been back to using it over the last year or so. And there's just parts of me that have seen, the way that they have all of their technology, and, approaching it from a technologist perspective, like, it's just, it all works. It's all there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's well designed. And then I remember, even, it was, maybe you were there, maybe you weren't. There was a time when they just, like, really just, like, boom, it was just like Headspace was everywhere. There's
Yep.
Headspace Radio. There was all these different things. So were you a part of that, one? And then two, what was the strategy there? Like, how did they pull that off?
Yeah, so I think what you're describing is at the beginning of the pandemic, when Headspace, I think, gave Headspace away to everybody who was unemployed for free. And there was a huge spike in, mental health issues during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And also, um, there's just a lot more people that were stuck at home. And so mental health and meditation became
Hmm.
a huge trend for the world, because it was a way to kind of stay sane in an insane world. So I had left in 2019, so right before that. But I can tell you, while I was there, what Headspace did, and I love that you called it out. So first of all, just from a design perspective, there's nothing more beautiful, I think, than the design of the Headspace app, and the way that it's always been designed is just,
Very
it was
nice.
designed first. Rich Pearson, the co-founder and former CEO, was an ad agency guy, and very passionate about beautiful, simple design, and he always brought really talented, creative people into the company that made it a very delightful and beautiful experience. So that's part of it, and that's just built into the culture and kind of DNA of that company. And then I think the other thing that they did that was really smart, and I can't take credit for this, is there was kind of a general policy of we only partnered with brands that were bigger. So whether it was the NBA or it was I think this is a couple years ago now, they partnered with Disney and Star Wars, and they did like, breathing with Chewbacca or Yoda.
Yeah.
But you pick these enormous brands. Nike was another one where it putting your brand next to a giant brand is really good for your brand, right? And so
Mhm.
Headspace is big, but those brands that they chose to partner with were bigger. And so from a partnerships perspective, they just did a lot of really smart stuff, to get the brand in front of, the world through really creative and interesting partnerships.
That's that's genius. I really like that. Partnering with brands, only with brands that are bigger than you.
They got
You
a
know,
ton of inbound requests to partner with smaller brands, and the answer was always no.
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Wow. Very interesting. Okay. So I know this is probably going to be a very generic and vague question, so I'll pre-frame it with that.
Mhm.
But do you have any, like, when you guys take on a client, or you're working on, hey, we're gonna grow this thing, we're gonna grow the massage therapy on demand thing, we're gonna grow Headspace or Google Play or
Mhm.
whatever it is there a formula? Do you have like and I know every project's
Yeah.
different. But for us on this quick hitter type of thing, is there any
Yeah.
kind of formula that you can, generalize at least?
The simplest way to distill down marketing and sales and growth in general is, what are you selling? Who is it for? Why should they care? What are you selling? Who is it for? Why should they care? It's basically it, right?
Simple.
And then there's just flavors and variations of that when it comes to actually taking a business, a product, a service, a brand from where they are to where they want to be. So it's identifying what is your North Star metric. What is that number you need to move? So if you're, if you're Headspace, it's subscribers, members that are paying for a Headspace subscription is probably your North Star. If you're, if you're Comedy Central and it's South Park, it's ratings, TV ratings on Nielsen, and more so today, it's like kind of digital watching stats on streaming, right? How many people are tuning in? I'd be surprised how much Nielsen is still a factor, though. And with Google, it was always about how many billions of users are on these platforms and how much are people spending on them, right? But what is your North Star metric, and figuring out how to move that. And then the playbook is for me is always the same. What are the growth experiments that we want to run? Think about everything from the scientific method, from understanding what is the impact that something's going to have, how many people can we reach, how confident are we that it's going to happen, and how easy is it going to be to do. And you start to build a framework. It's called RICE, Reach, Impact, Confidence, Ease, and it's a framework to growing businesses through rapid prototyping and experimentation. So we want to identify the channels and the programs and the ideas that we want to test, and then we want to run those experiments in a kind of a prioritized order that makes sense based on where we think the most impact will happen. And then we want to kind of have a feedback loop of, how did it do? What did we learn? How can we do better? And working your way down a list of those experiments until you kind of get to the channels, the tactics that work, and doubling and tripling down on them.
Yeah, no, it's I'm glad you brought up that rice method. I believe I know I did an episode on that on this show at one point. I
Excellent.
think it was a solo episode. It was a long time ago. I don't even remember what number it would be. It'd be like 100 something. But no, that
Nice.
makes a lot of sense, because you can I mean, a lot of us, we can get shiny object syndrome. Like, oh my God, I
Yep.
need to run ads, or I need to do this, or I need to do partnerships, I need to do whatever. And then you stretch yourself very thin, especially if you're kind of in that startup phase.
Yep.
Um,
And you have to ask
and
why. Why do I want to do that? Is it just because it's the last thing I heard about, the last thing I saw, somebody else told me? Is it shiny or is it real? Is it something I really should do? And B, being data driven and relying on the metrics, the user, the the kind of actual business to tell you where to go next.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to I believe you said it was called you said it was Heal, right? Heal, Heal. Okay.
Yep.
That
Mhm.
was yours. That was yours that you built and you started up.
I co-founded that with
Oh,
two other folks,
okay. And
a
you did
serial
that.
entrepreneur and a physician.
Okay, so you did that after you had worked at places like Google and the Daily Show and South and
Yep.
that kind of stuff, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
when you transitioned in that going back to that time in your life, when you transitioned from being at these big giant firms and working in these types of things, now you all of a sudden have your co-founded thing. Um, what was your approach? Take me through your mindset? Was it, because a lot of people kind of get stuck in this, well, should I build the thing first and then kind of figure out how to growth hack it from there? Should I kind of have a growth and marketing plan in place before I even go and design the product? Did
Yep.
you talk to customers first? Like what was your mindset back when it was just you and your co-founders?
Yep.
How are we gonna gut this hog? What are we gonna do?
Yeah, it starts with an idea. My co-founder and CEO had the idea, and he fortunately had started a lot of companies, and so he raised a lot of capital previously. So we did have money to start with, but it wasn't very much.
Okay.
And so where you start is exactly what you said, which is you start with the customer, the patient. We figured out pretty quickly that typically moms are the healthcare decision maker in a family, and they make decisions for their husband, often their spouse. They make decisions for their kids,
Yep.
and so that was kind of our target. We started on the west side of Los Angeles, and we wanted moms with a couple of kids to use Heal to get a doctor to come to their house and take care of their family. And once they had a great experience, they're going to tell the other moms. So that was kind of the insight about the customer, the user. And then tactically, it was guerrilla. It was going to the Brentwood Farmers Market and putting up a 10 by 10 tent, and myself standing next to one of our doctors handing out hand sanitizer and flyers and talking to people in the community and saying, hey, we're this new service where you can get a doctor to come to your house. And people couldn't believe it. I don't believe that's crazy. How can that be? How is that possible?
This was the
Um,
farmers market.
that's where we started. And
Wow.
over time we identified that there were certain things that worked better than others. Farmers markets don't scale very well, but it was a great way to meet people and listen directly to the ideal kind of customer, user, patient in the early days. And then,
Wow.
later on, it was clear that the best way actually to get in front of a lot of people was to work with big companies that had lots of employees that needed healthcare, and the company has an incentive to keep their employees healthy because it improves productivity, and they have an incentive to keep them healthy because it lowers their insurance costs. And so working with really big companies and big insurance companies enabled us to reach millions of people instead of just the few hundred that showed up at the farmers market.
It's a great story. And I,
Thanks.
I I can see, like you said, it was the farmers market's probably going to be um where moms are going, probably with their kids,
Hmm.
or it's that's very interesting. And I can assume this was in LA, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I can assume the farmers markets in LA. I've never been out to LA. I can assume they're much bigger than like where I'm at in Pittsburgh or West Virginia or
I've
this.
been to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania farmers markets. They're pretty legit. There's a lot of people that show up. I think it's, they're neighborhood farmers markets. So it's hundreds of people that might come out on a
Yeah.
every day of the week it's happening.
No, that's powerful though, because I did the same thing with the startup that we just launched. We was in the taxidermy space. We actually went to the conventions and the competitions, and we had the booths and tables and just talked to people about it. And it was I got a lot of interesting feedback that I was not expecting, and I was like, oh man, this is not where, not really what I was expecting it to be.
Paul
Um,
Graham has a famous kind of quote and blog post called "Do Things That Don't Scale."
yeah,
And to understand what people actually want, you have to talk to actual people. We're all so kind of stuck behind our screens and our desks and our homes, and like we don't talk to other people enough. So go to the grocery store, have a conversation with a random person. Like if you think whatever you've made is really great, go see if other people think so too.
100%. There's a lot of gold in that statement. There really is, because it just because you think something is a good idea doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It's just, you know, you're in your own head about it. And you can ask ChatGPT stuff all day long, and it'll tell you, yeah, this is a great idea. You should definitely do this. But yeah, there's a whole different world of actually talking to real human beings, right? Very interesting. Okay. So now kind of moving into what you have, and for those of you watching, you can see the cool logo, Winston Francois behind him, which actually like dims and everything he was showing me. It looks really, really sweet. How did you come up with the name Winston Francois for your consulting company? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, my wife and I have two French bulldogs named Winston and Frank. His given name is Francois, but we call him Frank. And so that was where the
Wow.
name of the company came from. And they're very, very sweet and now getting up there in years. Winston is 8 and Frank is 10.
I love it. I love it. I'm a dog person as well. We were talking about that. I'm surprised, knock on wood, we haven't heard him barking in the background yet. That's very cool. I was expecting something like, historical, or like it sounds like
No,
a very
yeah.
British name, or like
Well,
French, like
Winston is named after Winston Churchill, and Francois is named after, I think, a French philosopher, Francois Lyotard. But yeah, it's
okay.
I met my wife. She had Frank already, and we got Winston together.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. Um, all right, awesome. So do you guys work with, I mean, do you guys do you partner with brands above you? Do you guys work with only the Googles and the Apples of the world, or do you kind of like what level are you guys
Yeah,
looking at?
we work with all sorts of companies. We've worked with very early stage, seed stage startups all the way to and through, really big companies like you mentioned. I think, for us, it's about identifying the right partner who has, internally a curiosity and a desire to learn about what works for their business. So we're small. We only work with a handful of companies at a time, and we are picky, and so we want to work with people that are passionate about solving hard growth problems, eager to work with super smart people and let them do, what they're best at. That's been my approach to growing this and every business I've been in, which is, hire the smartest, most talented people I can find and throw them at hard problems and get out of their way. So we work with companies that are kind of philosophically aligned with that, and that's taken us to all sorts of interesting places. We worked with really cool early stage tech startups that have only raised a little bit of capital, to those that are making lots of money and want to grow faster, or do a kind of a big pivot in their strategy. And so, not a great answer, but I would say where we've focused in the last couple of years is worked with a lot of amazing health and wellness brands, as you can imagine, given my background, as well as a lot of kind of software companies, building consumer as well as B2B software.
Okay. No, that helps. Okay, couple other main topics I want to just get your thoughts on.
Sure.
So, this wide, wonderful world of AI. I always like to get people's thoughts on this topic. What have you seen in the last, since the explosion in the world of ChatGPT came to us, and the AI race has been on. How has this affected what you do, changed what you do? What do you see as far inside of this world of growth marketing that AI is affecting?
There's been an explosion of tools that leverage AI to make workflows easier, faster, better. I have not yet seen, and I don't think it exists in a way that we can see it in our kind of everyday consumer lives, artificial general intelligence, AGI. And so where we are today is AI is a great companion, partner, co-pilot, tool that can be used to make your work easier, more efficient, faster, better, smarter. And so, we have our own podcast with the company, and we use AI to help us produce our podcast episodes. And we use AI to generate content that we then have humans review to post, content marketing articles for our business or for our clients. We leverage AI to do outreach to potential clients and companies we want to work with. We leverage AI to kind of improve the quality of our connecting the dots between the products and services that we help market and grow with the audiences that care about. So, things like natural language processing and sentiment analysis to understand the user and the customer better. That then informs the strategy. And we use AI to generate creative assets, but we still have designers and video editors and people that are manipulating those assets and turning them into the final work. I think for me, it's all about AI plus human equals better stuff. It's not just, AI is going to replace us. It's how can AI make us better at what we do?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay. And then I'm curious on your thoughts on funding. I think when people hear these terms, growth, marketing, scaling,
Hmm.
especially in the software world,
Hmm.
specifically in the software world, app world, it's all about funding. How much funding can I raise? How can I go and put this to use? And there's I've talked to people on this podcast in both camps, people who are very for going out and getting funding, and people who are very hesitant or against doing that type of thing. So do you work with a lot of companies that have funding or are in the process of funding? And then if so, do you see that as a benefit or maybe sometimes a hindrance?
Most of the companies we work with have raised either venture capital or private equity.
Okay.
Um, and then there's others that are bootstrapped. If you can avoid raising money, my advice is always to avoid raising money. If your goal is to grow very, very fast, potentially at a loss in the early years of your business, and your goal is to eventually have a major kind of exit, whether that's through an IPO or a acquisition by a larger business, it may make sense to raise capital because if it's a highly competitive space, if it's a land grab and you need to get market share, having a lot of dry powder to go and do that is necessary. But the disadvantage, as I'm sure you know and your listeners have heard, once you raise capital, you are no longer your own boss.
Yeah.
You're beholden to your investors. You have a fiduciary responsibility to steward their capital effectively, and they have sometimes a strong desire to get involved in critical decisions, and in often cases have a right to be involved as a member of the board of directors. And so, the more of your company that you sell for investment and give away equity, the more decision-making authority and governance that you potentially also relinquish. So it's a balancing act for sure. My advice for somebody who's starting a tech company and wants to take it all the way, is to validate the idea in a bootstrapped and scrappy way to start and see if it's a really big world-changing idea. And if it is, then sure, go raise capital. But if you're starting a services business or you want to create a business that is sustainable, but something that you're not interested in selling, you probably don't need to raise money, or you have the ability to go get an SBA loan, small business loan, or friends and family might be interested in investing or loaning you money so that you don't have to go and kind of be beholden to investors and their limited partners who they are beholden to, which is a whole other can of worms.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, you guys you're either watching or you're listening to the dream team right here. If you're looking to go all the way with your tech platform, you come to Dapper No Code, we'll build it for you. Then you go to Jason, you go to Winston Francois, and they'll grow the thing for you. It's a match made in heaven. It really is, guys. Anyway,
I
I'm
love it,
joking.
Dan. I'm in. Let's do it.
um, anyway, I think we'll wrap this up. This was really, really awesome, Jason. Thank you so much. Where can we go? I believe it's wf.team. Is that where we can go?
Yep, the easiest URL is wf.team/pod, P-O-D. So that's wf.team/pod.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so go over there, guys. Check that out. He's got a really cool site actually, and very useful, very informative on all the things that him and his team do. And this is really, really cool stuff, man. I think this is very, very needed in this world, and I'm sure you guys could probably start growing. Even you say you only work with a few people at a time, and I'm sure if you wanted to grow, you could probably have as much work as you could possibly handle. With the way that the world is going and AI is coming and all this type of stuff. So wish you the best of luck, man. Absolutely.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Jason. We really appreciate you, man. So we'll put the link for that in the show notes. Thank you again to Jason for coming on. That is all for this episode, you guys. So again, be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a rating and review on the show. That really, really helps. All right, guys, that's all. And we will see you next time. Appreciate you.